Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. TIE TMS equips brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history coverage on a single screen. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, visit tiesoftware.com/battlestation. Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we're covering all things jumping into the asset-light model. Don't forget to subscribe to the Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we welcome the one and only Josh Allen, the Chief Commercial Officer at ITS Logistics. Thanks for coming on the show today, Josh.
Thank you.
I am kind of excited about this because this is something that we haven't really touched about that much in the brokerage space, and also just kind of as a solution that shippers can, take advantage of. And that is that asset light model. But before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and kind of how you got started at ITS.
Yeah, I'd love to. So listen, I'm going to break down my background for you. I guess you should know that, at this point in my career, I've been building logistics businesses for 20 plus years. I did take a 3.5 year hiatus to build a tech company that was focused on industrial products and a little bit of supply chain management. And that was in post-COVID. But I'm back to my roots now and focused on building logistics businesses at ITS Logistics.
I like it. I feel like everyone has a very interesting turn that has happened in their career, either during COVID or right after COVID. I myself went from a pricing analyst to talking to people about transportation and supply chain now. So, we've all taken some turns, but, it all comes back to the one fact that once you're in logistics and supply chain, you just cannot leave. You can never leave. You're stuck.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely, indeed. Fortunately for me, I've had the opportunity to touch several different vectors in the space. So, I've had, fortunate opportunities to build brokerage businesses, managed trans businesses, domestic freight forwarding businesses, international freight forwarding businesses. If you think about, where my career started in transportation, it was a very typical small, privately owned, family owned brokerage in a shoebox office, some random place in the Midwest where I started. And then, later parlayed into building bigger businesses. Even went to work for a financial services company, building a freight brokerage business there. Heck, I actually even uh, tried to launch a product building container derivatives on an energy trading floor about 15 years ago. So, been very, very fortunate to have several different experiences, but they all kind of come back to one premise, and that is, moving products, storing products, and helping companies drive efficiencies in their supply chain.
I love it. There's always got to be that one central theme. And that kind of goes nicely into what we were planning on talking about today. And that is that asset light approach to things. So if you don't mind, can you break down kind of at a high level what the asset light or the asset smart approach kind of entails when it comes to some supply chain solutions?
Yeah, I sure can. So, I'll be a little bit cheeky here to start. So, what exactly is an asset? is it is it a truck? Is it a trailer? Is it a chassis? Is it a warehouse? Is it technology? Is it people? What are these assets that everybody talks about like black magic? um, it's interesting for us when we think about it. Certainly we think about it as all of those things. Anytime that we make an investment and we put real tangible items on the balance sheet, we believe it's an asset. So, you could also say that, asset light is where, the modern 3PL is where asset investments, typically in the transportation variety, plus technology investments and people, make them really, really great and make them modern and made for today's shipper. But in terms of what does it entail to get into an asset light business? Again, you've got to put risk and true tangible assets onto the balance sheet. Said a little bit differently, you're going to have to invite some risk into your life, because as soon as you put those liabilities on the balance sheet, guess what? You have to pay for them. And they cost every day, every minute, every hour, every day. And so a little bit different than just hanging out in a non asset world. The second thing that it entails is, so for many folks that are that have built their careers in non asset based businesses, well, guess what? You have to eat your words a little bit. There's many folks that have built their businesses and built their careers on talking to customers and building solutions in a completely non-asset based variety. And now you got to eat crow a little bit, and you got to talk about why it makes sense and why you're a better partner and why you can do things differently than perhaps you did in the past, whether it's the same company or a different company. And then finally, you got to pick a direction. You got to pick a post. By definition, you can actually do things, and you can do things differently than you have in the past, but you have to understand where you're going. If you're just stapling in assets as a means to say that you have them, well, that's great. Sure, you're one of a few companies, or several handfuls of companies that are making those investments. But where are you going, and what's the return?
I think that brings up a pretty good point of, everyone likes to, I felt like maybe a year or two ago, everyone was very kind of on asset, excuse me, on asset light, or oh, we have trucks, we have trailers, we have all these different solutions. But I felt like it kind of became trendy, and it was more like I saw some various 3PLs, brokerages, et cetera hop on board with it, and then I was like, this doesn't really make sense for kind of what you do and how you, like, what the value add you bring for your to your shippers. I mean, for some it 100% makes sense because it's just kind of how their business is, but for others, I'm like, that does not make any sense. Like, did you just do this because it seemed like a good idea and you were just kind of hopping on the bandwagon because everyone was doing it? So I think that, really kind of, if you're going to go down that avenue, what does that look like for you? What are some of those solutions that you have? Like you mentioned, is it chassis? Is it trailers? Is it trucks? What does that look like? Is it equipment? Is it people? Is it technology? Like, knowing kind of what you want and what you expect out of it is super important, because otherwise I feel like you're kind of just doing it for the sake of doing it.
So really, I see companies that are making these investments, have four challenges in front of them almost consistently. And the first one is simply a lack of strategy, and simply figuring out where they want to go, where you want to go, how do you want to get there, etc. The second thing is, and this is sad, but it's real, ignorance. Sorry, gang. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And it's true. Like, talk to anybody that's built a business, and they've changed strategy, midway through it. And they just decided to build a portfolio business. They've decided to expand. Let's face it, you don't know what you don't know. And that's okay. But just understanding that going in and expecting to see some challenges along the way, you'll be far, better ahead if you just understand you don't know what you don't know. Number three, lack of discipline. So, we all talk about, chasing shiny objects, right? Well, if you're an entrepreneur, it's hard. You can see bright, shiny objects coming from customers all over the place, and it sounds great. It feels great. Everybody wants to say yes. Everybody wants to um, be needed. Everybody wants to solve problems. It's all in good faith. Unfortunately, the lack of discipline, the lack of creating return from investments is a real challenge. And unfortunately, that story ends badly for most. And then finally, like I said earlier, many times companies get into these situations because they've done extremely well. So kudos. Guess what? It's not always going to be fantastic. There are down cycles, there are challenging environments, there are credit crunches. You have to plan for the worst. And so, not looking out for those types of days, months, weeks, that's a real challenge. And unfortunately, that too creates a bad story for many.
Yeah, I think that that last part especially is kind of what we're seeing now because, when spot rates and you can make money, you basically are printing your own money. You can get away with a lot. You can get away with a lot of mistakes. You can make a lot of money and do a lot of good in your business. And that's also when a lot of people who maybe like just want to try to make hay while the sun shines. Just how many cheesy analogies can I fit in here? But I think that's when we saw that, those people flooding to become a freight broker or, developing an agent program of some sort to kind of get a piece of that pie, why that pie was piping hot. But now that everything has cooled off and we are in a down market, it's one of those where those who have been that kind of where that's where it separates another cheesy pun. That's where it separates the cream from the crop, um, because it's those that have been in the business for a while and those that do know that those cycles swing and they swing hard. Those are the ones that have that rainy day fund that are prepared to weather the storm because it's been a longer storm than a lot of people expected to weather. So I think that is something that some people who are just trying to get started or figure something out on their own, I think that's something that a lot of people forget is that the market swings, and when it swings, it's merciless both ways.
Yeah, totally. So from my perspective, uh, here's the good news. There's some silver lining here, right? Um, there there are gobs and gobs and gobs of people out there in this industry, great people that have built asset-based businesses for years. And fortunately, unfortunately, I guess in these down markets, unfortunately, companies start to turn assets in. Maybe they abandon a strategy, and you have good people that unfortunately are looking for new opportunities. So, if you are on the positive side of that situation and looking for talent, I would recommend that you hire individuals that know how to do this, know how to construct it. And they can take all the fantastic ideas and then in the challenges of the norm and blend them with their tribal knowledge. And typically they can produce, fantastic results. So I would recommend that, you hire the right talent. Second thing is create a proper plan. Do you know what success looks like? And again, I talked about not having discipline as being one of the pitfalls and creating a bad story from your investment, but stick to the plan and just be simple about it. The third thing is, I find that many of these, you know, asset smart or asset light strategies are typically born from uh, you know companies that again are having success, but they are typically startups within an established organization that has shared services or they have capabilities, they have resources. My only advice to you is support the heck out of them. It's a new business. You're incubating a new business, and it's not just going to win on its own. You're going to have to help it. You're going to have to feed it. You're going to have to nurture it. It's going to need water, sun, love, all the things, but you have to support it. It's not going to be lightning in a bottle.
It's the under the kind of that part of you can't just say, okay, here you go, have a nice day, like run the company. It like forget about lose my phone number. It's literally like, taking care of a newborn baby. You have to like check in on it and say, like, are you doing okay? Or is this like, all right, what are we doing for this? Like, can you hold your head up yet? Like, are you able to take solid foods, but on a very real business level of, okay, well, have you onboarded your first customer? Like, how is it going? What about this? What about that? Because, the same way that some of those first customers take the leap with those newer brokerages, newer companies, or even if you are an existing brokerage, like, making that switch to even just having one customer on an asset light model, that's a big plunge. And there's a lot, like you said, risk is a part of this conversation, because it's one of those where if you do have an existing customer, or if you have a new customer and they're your first asset light customer, there's a lot that can go wrong, and they possibly left an established situation to come try out your services. So there's not a lot of room for mistakes, because once someone already says like, oh, they're horrible to work with, like they don't know what they're doing, like that will spread like wildfire, and that will be more detrimental to not getting really any support to start off with. So I think that's something that cannot be overlooked enough.
Yeah, totally agreed. One interesting component there is, especially for companies that are weighing the opportunity to invest, to make the move to asset light, or not. There is a theory or a methodology I think that more people need to adopt, and that simply having very, very transparent, honest, collaborative discussions with their customers and tell them where they are in the evolution of this new product, this new business. Chances are, if you give people the opportunity, most folks like to help other folks. And so the customers typically will help you through all those turbulent, challenges in the early going, if you're open and honest with them, if you have transparency, if you have some integrity, it works.
That is something that I have been shouting from the rooftops forever. And it's not even necessarily like if you are starting a new program, 100% let them know, hey, this is new. We might have some hiccups. If you just pack your patient pants, we will be fine. It will be okay. It's just we're ironing out some kinks. Because you mentioned earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're starting something new, you don't know what's going to come up as a problem until you find out that it's a problem. And that's something that I used to scream about, because not literally scream figuratively, because no one should be screaming in offices, but that's something that I used to get really frustrated about, is because I would say like, okay, we're going to go run this RFP for this customer. Like we're going to go source out very competitive pricing for their freight on their behalf. So can I just have some information about their business? Like when they're like where their locations are, the hours, receiving hours, pictures of freight. And they were like, well, we can't ask our customers that. And I'm like, why not? Like they are paying us for a service and they have an expectation. And if you want to deliver these savings that you've promised them, I need pictures of the freight, because I can't get good pricing for them, thus reducing their costs if I don't have pictures. Because if like I said, like you said, if my carriers, if they don't know what they don't know, they're gonna err on the side of caution for them, which is not going to be profitable for my shipper. And that is something that I've never understood, is why everybody, once they land a customer, is so hesitant to just pull open the curtain and say, okay, here you go, this is what we have going on. I find that, like, obviously you don't need to tell them like every minute of every day, like, okay, this shipment's here, 20 minutes later, okay, now it's here. You don't have to do that, but at the very least, like, hey, this is what picked up, this is what rolled, this is what's having a problem, here are the problems, here's what we've done to fix them. Like that very baseline level of information. I'm like, why are we so hesitant to do that to our shipper? Like our shipper is paying us for a service, or we have promised to do this service for us. Like if I had a handyman that I paid and he just didn't tell me if he was done, or like didn't tell me how things were going, I'd be like, what am I paying you for? But yeah, it's one of those that I truly do not know. And that is something that I wish people would just say, like, just bring a little bit more of transparency to something. And like, you don't have to say, we're just going to figure it out and do it live. And we don't really know what we're doing, but we're going to figure it out. You don't have to be that transparent. You can just say, like, hey, this is a new program we're rolling out. You're kind of one of the first customers we're working on it in with. And if you could just have a little bit of patience and understanding with us, more often than not, they're going to say, oh, okay, cool. Versus like, why have you dropped my load 4 times this week?
Yeah, it's a core human behavior, right? People like to help people. I mean, generally speaking, there's a small percentage of the universe that really doesn't want to, and they want to hang out in the shadows somewhere and not help. But most people like to help other people, and they feel good. right? The endorphins are rolling, and feel good about yourself, feel good about people around you, and they like to help. We talk about it all the time here, in that, between transparency and sometimes even, vulnerability, superpowers. If you have the confidence, if you have the confidence and you're a believer in other people, it works.
It really does. It really does. And that is, what a beautiful way to end on. Except we are at the end of our time. But don't worry, there's always room for one more question. And Josh, everyone that's come on this show has had to answer this question. And I feel like it's only fair that you don't quite escape it either. And that is a hot dog a sandwich?
No way, no how. Let's see. I spent, nearly 10 years in Chicagoland, and I loved so many things about my time in Chicagoland. And one of them being, you can't go from one block to another without having a hot dog shop or at least a vendor on the corner. And if I walked up to them and I said, "Hey, sir, ma'am, how about a hot dog sandwich?" I have no idea what would happen, but maybe they throw something at me, and maybe they have some choice words for me, and maybe they'd sneak something into my now hot dog sandwich. I don't know. All I can tell you is it would not be a good result.
I think they would just so I think it would probably go something along the lines of, "Man, get out of here." Or something like that. But make it a little bit more colorful. Um, but I did forget about your Chicagoland adventures, and those people have some very strong opinions on food.
Thin pizza, stuffed pizza, double stuffed pizza, calzone. Where does calzone fit into the whole world of pizza?
Exactly. The opportunities are endless. So if anyone has any questions about your hot dog as sandwich opinions, or if they have any asset light or asset heavy, or pretty much any kind of questions, where can they find you outside the show?
Well, you can typically find me in Reno, Nevada. At least 50% of the month, I'm in Reno, Nevada, at headquarters here at ITS Logistics. However, you may also find me at one of our distribution centers that we have um, in Reno, Nevada, Indianapolis, or Fort Worth, or you might find me at our new Fort Worth Transportation Center that we're launching Q3, late Q3. Yeah, late Q3.
Find Check Call the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves shows. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.